Our Lord in today's gospel reading is criticizing the scribes and the Pharisees, calling them hypocrites. Now keep in mind that these were the spiritual leaders of the people at that time. Now notice he says, you cross sea and land to make a single convert. That's very admirable. Imagine someone going to such a great extent just to make a convert. Very, very admirable. You see, sometimes we do good things also, but sometimes we're blind to the bad things that we do, or we're blind to some of the attitudes that we may have. And this is what our Lord is getting at. So he says, even though you make a convert, you make him twice as much a child of hell as yourselves because of your wrong example, your bad example, but also your bad teachings. And he gives one particular example in regards to the sanctuary or the gold, if you're going to swear by it, which is of greater value, or by the altar and the gift on the altar. Now keep in mind, this is in Old Testament times. So the people would bring various gifts to sacrifice on the altar, and the altar was always there in the temple, right? So people made a sacrifice, and they would see the sacrifice that they're making as something valuable. Like, let's say somebody offered a sheep or a goat or something like that. But in reality, it's the altar that makes the sacrifice to have value in the eyes of God. And this is what our Lord is getting at. These individuals are spiritually blind. Now, the reality is that to a certain extent, unfortunately, we are all spiritually blind. So yes, we recognize many truths. Yes, we live our faith in many ways as best as we can. But there's many things that we are blind to. If we really understood, I remember a friend of mine, he said, if people really believed in our Lord's true presence in the Eucharist and how beneficial it is to pray in front of the Blessed Sacrament, he said we would have to tear down the walls of churches to make room for all the people that would be kneeling around the tabernacle 24/7. So we're kind of spiritually blind. And what is it that blinds us? It's not just our ignorance, that's part of it, yeah. But you see, it's our sinfulness that blinds us, our sinful inclinations. And the root, or one of the roots of our sinfulness, is pride. Now think about pride. When we give in to pride, we tend to exalt ourselves above others. We tend to look down upon others. So we're kind of deceiving ourselves to think that we are somehow greater than we actually are, and that other people are somehow less than we are. It's a deception. So simply giving into pride, it's already a deception. So because we give into this deception, we become blind in other areas in the spiritual life also. I mean, think, for example, of someone who might be addicted to pornography or lustful type sins. Well, that person, they're going to have a harder time seeing relationships for what they're meant to be, because they're just going to be focused or fixated on the sexual aspect of a relationship. Or they're going to view persons as simply objects of sexual gratification. So they're blind to the real dignity of the person. They're blind to the value of the person, and they just kind of look at the sex appeal of the person. So in so many areas in our lives, we can be spiritually blind. And so it's important that we try to overcome this spiritual blindness. How do we do this? By overcoming our sinfulness, especially our pride. And pride is a difficult thing to overcome. Spiritual authors point out that when you root out pride in one area of your life, often it will pop up in another area of your life without you even realizing it. So we're all prone to this pride, unfortunately. So let us ask God to help us to be humble. It's interesting when a person who's humble, if they do something wrong, they're willing to acknowledge it, and they're usually willing to apologize for the wrong that they did, the mistake that they made, or the offense that they caused. Often people who are proud, They're not willing to acknowledge their mistake. They tend to point the accusatory finger at others. And that's just a good example of what pride does to us. It blinds us to even our own actions and the right and wrong of our own actions. So, yeah, let us ask God to be humble, and let us strive to love our neighbor as ourselves.